All right, so guys, today on the Attack in the Paint pod, I have with me Scott A. Hale, who is the CEO and co-founder of Basketball News, amongst other things. In my research, I found that Scott appears to be a serial entrepreneur, and so I'll let him kind of give you guys a little bit more insight about what he does and who he is overall. What I do know is he's a Detroit native. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Um, yep. And so I'm a Chicago kid by birth,
Okay.
but grew up in Georgia. So we can talk about that throughout the call. But I'll
Oh,
let
yeah.
you kind of give a little insight about who you are and what you do, though, Scott. Go ahead.
Definitely. Well, first and foremost, appreciate you having me on. Like I said, I'm the co-founder and CEO of basketballnews.com. Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer that no matter what it is, you just have to go out and get it. So while I've held many a job, I feel like they were all just passing time until I could ultimately do what I wanted to do, right?
Right.
So, I've started several businesses, invested in a few others, but I just, you know, I just truly believe that you got to go get what you want to do, right? And so,
Right.
and just by embracing the journey, embracing the grind of it all. So, we officially launched Basketball News about a year and a half ago, November 2020, which is crazy, like right in the middle of the bubble, you know.
Right.
But yeah. So we just been grinding ever since, and Lord willing, hopefully, this fall we'll be launching footballnews.com as well.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. So I guess the first thing I wanted to talk about is this. So doing my research, I found your Twitter, and
Yeah.
your bio or your I guess your tagline says "My family, my freedom, my hairline." So
Yes. Yes.
as a black man, I'm all too familiar about the importance of our hairline. So
Maybe
how
not in
about
that order either.
right? Exactly, exactly. But and then so you got Jackie Robinson of 14 Mile and future owner of the Pistons. So
Yes.
out of these things, tell me which
Okay.
one is the most important to you in the because this is a lot for me,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's a lot of stuff right there. So tell me which one is most
Right, right.
important to you.
All jokes aside, family far and away. My mom and dad, and I'm the youngest of four, and
Okay.
just seeing, um, to be completely honest, I've had a relatively easy life, right?
Mm,
So I feel like my parents and their parents before them sacrificed so much. I mean, my dad's dad was a coal miner. He was literally going to work knowing he was killing himself, right? Getting black lung, but he knew that that was the only way that he could feed his family. So when you just think of things like that, it's like, if I'm ever having a hard day or, just like I was saying, launching businesses while it's difficult is like, that's not even comparable to a black man in West Virginia in the
hmm
30s being a coal miner. You know what I mean? So it's just,
in West Virginia.
yes, yeah. In West Virginia. And that was my dad's dad. And then my mom's family's from Tulsa, Oklahoma,
Mhm.
So my mom actually grew up on a street called Pine, which I only bring that up because there's Greenwood, Archer, and Pine, which is the initials for the Gap Band. So just have a
Okay.
family from the South, moved to the D pretty much like everyone else did.
Mm,
Unions were hiring, and I just think of not only just the sacrifices, but like the actual fabric of the people they are.
mhm.
Yeah, I mean, far and away, family's definitely number one. Hairline is close though. The older I get, the hairline's moving up that list though.
Hey, no, I definitely understand. Definitely understand. Give me a little. So I'm not familiar with 14 Mile. Everyone knows 8
Okay.
Mile, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Give me the premise behind Jackie Robinson of 14 Mile.
Okay, so basically what happened is and my parents met at Central State.
Okay,
Um,
my brother went there. My oldest brother went to Central
oh,
State.
really? Oh,
Yep.
okay, see, you already know. So
Yep.
they met there.
Okay.
My mom moved to Detroit. My father to this day claims he didn't follow her there, but we all know he did. And so they lived in the actual city itself. So when I was born, we lived on Joy Road. So anyone from the D know like Joy, put like this on the west side, Joy Road is known.
Okay.
Okay. So, and you'll randomly hear it in songs now, Exit 9, that's off the Lodge Freeway.
Okay.
But back in the day, essentially, man, in the '80s, because my mom and dad are, essentially like small town people. When
Mm.
they moved, instead of just moving to like Southfield, which like a lot of black people did, maybe Oak Park, like a lot of people did, they moved to a town called West Bloomfield. So it was way out. It was like a dirt road. So I grew up off of 14 miles. So I was born in the D, and then I
Mm.
kind of grew up in 14 miles. So I always joke because when I was growing up, like the only black people in the neighborhood were like Barry Sanders, right?
Gotcha.
So, so, but if you go back now, it's nuts because like West Bloomfield High School is like, the football team's all black. They have D1 athletes. And it's nuts for me to see, thinking of when I was growing up. I was like, we were the only black family for miles. So that's why I always joked I'm the Jackie Robinson of 14.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay,
and
that
it's
makes
funny
perfect
too,
sense.
because growing up, all of my friends are always teasing me, oh, Scott, you from the suburbs. When I go back home now, that's where they all live. They all live in Farmington and West Bloomfield now. So, you know,
Yeah, everybody always wants to get to the suburbs. It's when someone's there already. Is this that's when
right,
that's
right,
all it is. Like
right.
when you've got it already, when you kind of made it there almost. You're the only one, so you gotta have something to get picked on about. And that's kind of what
Oh,
it is.
without the Carlton jokes, all that stuff, man. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You got it.
Yep.
So, I mean, it is what it is. But truth be told, though, well, I would prefer to stay in the city just because there
Mm.
was more to do, right? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Friends, family, barber shop is nearby and all that. But growing up where I did was extremely um, diverse. Like
Mhm.
literally, and I had friends from all over the world. They're Jewish, Chaldean, Italian, or whatever. So
Mhm.
um, I think in a weird way, I'm not gonna say that it prepared me better. I would just say
Mhm.
that it prepared me differently.
Yeah, for sure. I think the having the ability to be immersed in other cultures earlier gives you I think it does give you an advantage because I think the one thing that I noticed I actually was able to go to a all white private school in high school.
Hmm.
Um, and just that it was only a year too because we ended up not being able to afford it as a family, but that 1 year helped me so much because just being
Right.
able to communicate, even get how jokes, what kind of jokes they make,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
just the little things like
Nah.
that. It made such a I equate a lot of my success as an adult just because I have the ability to kind of fit in any circle that you can drop me in while still being myself, obviously, but just
Right.
knowing how people are, knowing how they move, knowing how they operate, and knowing that it's not offensive or they're not intending to be offensive, while someone who's not from that culture or maybe not have been around it would immediately take offense to something that wasn't deemed offensive. And
That is a
so,
great point. That's a great
and
point.
so,
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
And that's real because it's one of those things where it's like when you get in the workplace, whether it's corporate America or like you go off to a big school, right?
Hmm.
And I wonder sometimes, right? Because I think it's a fine line. Because I think you said it absolutely perfectly. The key is to still always be yourself, right? Like I feel like people somehow have this stigmatism that being professional or being on time isn't being who you are. No, no, no. Being professional and being on time is showing the ultimate respect, right?
See.
Because if you say, Scott, let's go to lunch at 1 o'clock and I show up late, it's like I'm literally telling you that I don't value your time. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I feel like it's one of those things though too, where it does give you an advantage because at the end of the day, just as we're all navigating things, whether it's sports, work, or what have you, it's like you're gonna have to communicate with different types of people all the time.
Yep.
And to your point, it's like some things are a cultural thing. It's not offensive at all, right?
Hmm.
Then there's other things where it's like, hey, you know what? I gotta nip this in the bud because I already
Yep.
know where this is going, right? So yeah, man,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
So I can bring you in with me real quick. I lived in China for about a year, maybe about 12 years ago. I was over there for
Oh wow.
basketball, um, and so the Chinese word for sounds a lot like the N word. It sounds a lot like the N word, and so
Wow.
literally like my first day, of course I'm the only black guy
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah,
So we're sitting at dinner, and guys ordering food, and I hear it, and like
yeah.
antennas like you turn around like what? And and the guy who was our initial like guide for the first couple of weeks that we were
Yeah.
there, he just kind of patted me on my shoulder, and I think he caught it immediately to tell me, no, James, that means and I was like, all
Mm.
right, just just making sure, but
Hey,
it was
man. You about to fight the whole country over there.
Man, man, and that's the thing, like you hear it every, and the things you want, like
Right.
it was so helpful, like just that moment because you heard it everywhere, and if you
Yeah.
don't,
Oh,
you
I
didn't
imagine
know,
you're
like
all the time.
you probably just you turn around like, what you call me, kind of thing, and it kind of it just kind of goes from there. But it was
That's hilarious.
yeah, but it was like literally like I was fresh off the plane, jet
Right.
lagged like a mug, hungry, but they were trying to make us stay up so we can kind of get accustomed to the time change. And so
Okay.
they made us go to dinner, and like immediately I was like, what did he just, and it was like, oh no, James, it's not what he meant. And so, but that was like, for me, that's a cultural thing. But if you don't
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can, that can mess a lot of things up real quick.
Hey, that's such a good example. I'm stealing that. And I'm gonna use that. Because no, seriously, like that's the perfect example. Like clearly he's not saying anything to you disrespectful, but also he doesn't even realize why you would think it would be, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah. And that's crazy.
Exactly. Yep. All right. So, and the last thing we're going to hit real quick is okay. Future owner of the Pistons. So, I mean,
Oh,
obviously, you're a
yeah.
Detroit native. So, obviously, you're a diehard Pistons fans. I'm going to assume.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so tell me how deep your Piston fandom lies.
I mean, once I found out you're from Chicago, I almost hung up. No, truth be told, I really want to buy the Lions because they're so putrid.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, honestly, ironically, a Chicago native. You already know where I'm going. Isaiah Lord Thomas
Mhm.
III, the greatest little
Yep.
man of all time. And I mean no disrespect to Allen Iverson or anyone else, but yeah, when I was a kid, so my mom actually coached basketball, so
Mhm.
that's where I probably got my love of just sports from. Is all the women in my family were huge sports fans. They played,
Gotcha.
watched the games, and I don't mean like watch the games because they thought so and so looked cute or no, no. I mean, I'm talking about knowledgeable, like call play action here, learn
Yeah.
how to feed the post. We need to run some high screen pick and roll. Like, so this was the women in my family watching the game,
Yeah.
right? So for me, just, I fell in love with basketball since I can, like, I mean, I was probably 4 or 5 years old, right?
Gotcha.
And I was really young, but we drafted Isaiah. And the thing I just loved was because he was little.
Yeah.
Like, that's all I cared about, right? It's like, I didn't know anything about the game. And I was like, how is this guy so little and fearless, right? So just
Mhm.
growing up, it's like, um, you know, just him, the team, they were absolutely terrible. And just the whole city embraced them because they watched step by step a champion be built, right?
Built. Mhm.
I mean, sure, it's fun to win all the time, but imagine if you're like a 17-year-old Patriots fan, it's like, nothing else, right?
Right.
So, while it's cool and it's great, but like you've never sat through those horrible seasons of 20 and 62 or whatever, right? And just
Mhm.
watch the team get better and better. So yeah, Lord willing, if I can ever find the financial means, even if I could buy a small piece of the team, I would I
Yeah.
would definitely do that.
Yes. Listen, I'm sending positive vibes your way for that one for sure.
Yeah, I
For sure.
appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So mom was a coach.
Yep.
I was going to kind of segue into this. Um, if you can recall your earliest basketball memory, do you know what that is? Because I always, so for me, so we moved to Georgia when I was young, but everybody
Okay.
like mom, dad, brothers, like I'm the third of three boys. So, but my two older brothers are like they were relatively teenagers when we got here, so they were Chicago everything. And so, of course,
Right.
I'm Chicago everything, even though I
Yeah.
really never experienced what they experienced. So, but my earliest memory of basketball is the Bulls winning the championship in '91.
Mm.
That's my literal. I can't think of anything. Michigan basketball, Fab
Oh
Five,
yeah. Yep.
Chicago Bulls. That's that.
Yep.
Those are my first memories of basketball. And so for me, like, I can't help but like Michael Jordan, it's Scottie Pippen. Like
Right.
those are then it's C Webb and Jalen Rose and all those guys kind of like falling right in line behind them pretty much.
Yep.
That's what I remember about basketball first.
Mm.
Like, do you recall your first real basketball? I mean, I know it's probably harder because your mom's a coach, so you
No,
probably
yeah.
little, but like, do you have a memory that kind of sticks out as your first basketball memory?
Yeah, probably just being around her, like I said, her blowing the whistle, having to do the drills. So, just being younger, like I always tried to fit in.
Mm,
And it was cool because obviously the girls' ball is a little bit smaller. So, it is when you're younger, the whole issue is strength, right? Like
yep.
you're just throwing the ball up there, two hands, just like, just hoping it goes in. So
Mhm.
for me, it's like And she was extremely, focused on like fundamentals. So like, I mean, I remember her showing me how to jump stop and shoot a floater. Like, I mean, it's one of those things where in the middle of a game, if I did something wrong, it's funny. The other parents would like look at her because she'd be saying like jumps, like, bounce pad, she wanted me to play like John Stockton, basically, right?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
right.
Just come up, super fundamental. But it is funny though, because you mentioned Fam Five. I remember we were in the 8th grade and we were playing against C Webb, and like he was
Mhm.
already like 6'6" or whatever, right?
Wow.
And yeah. I mean, the thing about it was he wasn't just 6'6" because a lot of kids hit growth spurts. He was fluid, like he was
Yeah.
so coordinated, right? So like I don't know. I mean, maybe he feels like he had one of those phases, but I never saw it like from like seventh grade on. So he literally takes the ball off the backboard, goes like coast to coast and dunks, right? And my mom yells out, "I need to see his birth certificate!" Like everyone just started laughing, right? But like he was always that dude,
Yeah.
So yeah, but no, when I say probably that, just being around my mom. So like yourself, I got an older brother. He was 6 years older, so he was always blocking my shot. So
Mhm.
my mom would just teach me to shoot a moon ball, and
Mhm.
like no matter what, I mean, I'd rather airball than have my brother block my shot. So
Yeah.
being in the gym from like 5 on, really,
Yeah. Gotcha.
was the first
So,
memories.
it's funny you mentioned the whole block your shot thing because my brother right above me, HJ. So I always equate my toughness, the toughness that I have because of my two older brothers, because they never took it easy on me, right?
Right.
And we fought like in my house. We
Yeah.
like fought like it was like so we was gonna scrap, and so like holes in the wall, like
Yeah.
all that stuff. That's what we did. But my brother was he was such an ass. He was such an ass. He was such a
You're
but
supposed
like
to be though.
right,
You're supposed
exactly.
to be.
It's supposed to be because like I'm grateful for him now, but like it was a time probably from like I don't know 5 to about 8 years old where every time we played basketball he would block every shot, like
That's how my brother was.
every
Yeah.
every shot, like no matter what it was, he was gonna, and it wasn't like just here. He was like volleyball spiking my stuff, and to the point where I was going in the house crying every time. I would go in the house
Yeah.
crying every time, and then I'll never forget. Probably like I couldn't beat him for a long time. My freshman year coming back from college, I beat him for the first time. And I was done.
Mm,
I was done playing him. I was
mm,
never gonna play him
mm.
again.
That was
But
it.
like, that was it. That was it. And he wanted to play. He wanted to play against somebody. I was like, nope, I'm good. You got
Nope,
me
nope.
101 times. I'm
Right.
gonna get my one, and
I'm
I'm
on a
good.
streak. Man, I'm
Yep,
on a
that's it.
streak now.
Keep it. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it.
Nah, he was doing his job though.
He
Honestly,
he
and
he
my
did. He did.
brother
He
did the
did.
same thing. Like he used to block my shot, beat me up. But think about it. When you went to school though, it's like I played fearless because my
Yep.
brother was already like 6'1" and I was probably like 4'4", right? So it's
Yep.
like, I wasn't scared of anyone in my grade.
That's literally like the exact. My thing is till this day, I still have never met anybody that I think can kick either of my brother's ass. And
Right,
because and
right,
like
right.
so like they've brainwashed me so bad that because of them, I don't care who you are, how
Right,
big
right,
you
right.
are. If I see you, I square up. Like that's it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I have no
yeah.
fear because of them. And
I
so
love it.
so
I
like
love it.
people typically were like, you're crazy. I'm like, I might be, but no one bothered me. It was always the initial I'm gonna pick on you thing until I spaz, and then after I spaz, people leave me alone. And I
Right, right.
so
I like that.
that was my life. That was my life. That was my life.
Yeah, yeah.
Um so so to kind of transition from the family stuff a little bit. So I saw that you are a documentary filmmaker, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So first, well, two-part question. First, how did you get into it? And second part is, or this is just two questions rather. Second is, what is your favorite sports documentary movie?
Okay. Yeah. So I attended Xavier University in
Hmm.
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Hmm.
Musketeers.
Yep.
Clearly the best team in the city because we spanked the Bearcats. Shout out to my guy Nick Van Exel. But I actually had a theater minor. So I
Okay.
always, just like everyone else, I love the movies. I grew up watching everything from sci-fi to action movies to like,
Mm.
but it's funny because even when I was young, I always loved like foreign films.
Okay.
And I think what drew me to them was like the tempo of them, right? Where like especially even now, like a lot of the shows, man, on Amazon or whatever, if it's from overseas, they take their time. They're more focused on like character development, the actual storyline. Where like you notice here, they're just gonna cast the two best looking people they can find, and man, the dude for no reason has his shirt off running down the street. You know what I mean? So
Right.
so I was always drawn to like the stories themselves, right?
Mhm.
And so I had a theater minor,
Okay.
and after college, I moved to LA, and I had a cousin that actually worked on a few Spike Lee films. His name's Preston Holmes,
Okay.
and he got me a job on. Dang, I'm drawing a blank on the movie. It was about the Million Man March, and it's a Spike
I know
Lee
what you're talking
film. I'm
about.
drawing a
Yep.
total blank, but I was a set
Get
PA.
on the bus. Get on the bus.
Get on the bus. Thank you.
Get on
Get
the
on the
bus.
bus, man.
Yeah. Mm.
And I knew absolutely nothing, because the one thing I found out the first day is like, okay, theater and film is completely different. Like maybe from a staging aspect, a little
Mhm.
bit of lighting, but like, theater is so interactive. It's
Right.
personal, right? Whereas like filming a movie, especially just, see like, Spike up close, um, it's like the tiniest puzzle pieces, and he's putting them together, right? Like
Mhm.
in these 30-second clips at a time. So, but yeah, so that just like sparked my interest, to the moon. And so just the older I got, it was more about just kind of combining my passions, if you will, right? It's like, like I mentioned earlier, I grew up loving sports in general, but basketball especially. And then it's like having a film and TV background. And yeah, so doing that. And I mean, far and away, Hoop Dreams is the best sports documentary. It's not even close. Um, there's so few films that stand the test of time, and I've watched that movie like from start to finish legitimately 15 times, and I've
Mhm.
watched pieces of it another probably 25, right?
Right.
Because it encapsulates everything, like the struggle, the dream, the passion, the broken heart. Like, is this gonna work? I mean, it has everything. I mean, watching as you're watching the power going out in the house, it's just
Yeah.
like, man, so
Mhm.
yeah, without a doubt. Now obviously, it spawned so many other films. You have 30 for 30s now, but as far as like an actual sports documentary, to me, Hoop Dreams
Yeah.
has to be, man, number one.
Gotcha.
Has to be.
Gotcha. Yeah. The crazy, I wrote down Hoops Dream. It's actually on my notes right now, but
Yeah,
that's my same thing. Arthur Agee was
it's
my
incredible.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
I rooted for Arthur so much. Yeah,
man.
yeah, man, man,
Yeah, man.
yeah, I did. Okay, good stuff. Um, so, what I want to kind of segue to now is just what I call what you do in theory, like what people like us do, people who are like pursuing basketball in an alternative lane, right? Typically, because
Hmm.
everyone knows players, everyone knows coaches. The agent kind of
Right.
thing is kind of more popular now, but typically those are like the more glamorous
Yeah.
segues into the business, right? But I feel like people who have to find their own niche or their own lane, it's for me, it's kind of more of a passionate pursuit. Like it's like you passionately pursue what you want to do, right?
Hmm.
Steve Harvey had this video on YouTube. The whole thing about you got to jump sometimes, right? About like whatever it is, whatever it is you want to do, no matter what it is. Sometimes you got to jump and kind of like let the chips fall where they may. And he kind of talked about how like eventually your parachute will open up. But you have to take the leap first to just jump out there and see what happens. And I feel like what you're doing it's kind of that's how I see it because this is unique by itself. I mean, not in the sense of like people have sites all the time, but to have something that, in theory, like comes out of nowhere, so to speak, and is doing so well right away. That's that's an anomaly in itself. Because of and then obviously black man at the head of the table almost makes it even more impressive because unfortunately we just don't always have the same opportunities, right? And
Right.
so talk to me just about passionately pursuing your purpose. And again, like it could be, obviously it's not one thing because you've done a lot of things, but like basketball has kind of always been seems to be always kind of have been at the forefront of what you want to do. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I just feel like it's one of those things where um there's a difference between a job and a career, you know? And there's nothing wrong with having jobs while chasing your career. And I think sometimes people get confused by that.
Mhm.
And I feel like people always think like, oh, I mean, this isn't what I want to do. I mean, how many people actually get to do what they want to do all day, all the time, right? So it's like, I know it's a different sport, but the analogy that I would give is probably soccer.
Mm,
Because in order to score, a lot of times you pursue down the wing, then you have to back up, go all the way back, kick it back to your goalie, and then strike again, right? And
yep.
so to me, that's more like a metaphor, I'd say, in general. So the one thing I've always focused on is finances.
Mm,
I'm not money motivated. And
mm,
so I know that sounds ironic, but it's like, so I always make sure that my money's straight so I can chase the things that I want to chase. And
mm,
I feel like the only poor decisions I've really made career wise were based on just money.
yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, okay, so if I have money in the bank, then guess what? I will not sleep. I'll grind. I'll shovel shit up a hill. I don't care because I'm going to do whatever it takes legally without
Mhm,
scamming people, right? To
yep.
get where I need to get. And I feel like sometimes people have that same drive and energy,
Mm,
but they don't have finances right. So now they're stuck working a job that they have no, what I mean? And then
yeah.
it's just like day, right? Like we mentioned a little bit earlier, it's like you work your ass off 5 hour, 5 days a week just to be off and hit happy hour on Friday, Saturday, you watch the game, Sunday, you're already thinking about Monday again, right? Like to
Yep.
me, the rat race is just absolute hell. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what I'm gonna do is first things first. Let me just get my life in order, right? And
Mhm,
so pretty much since I was like 25, that's what I focused on first. And then once I did that, it's like, okay, we all love hoop. We all hooped all the time.
mhm,
So once that dream was over, I was like, okay, man, I waved the towel for a hot second in college. It's like, okay, now that's over. Do I want to coach? And honestly, I thought for a long time that's what I wanted to do.
mhm,
I guess one of the things though, and I did in high school a little bit, and I was like, I don't want to spend my life recruiting 16 and 17-year olds and either having to lie to them or have the future of my employment depend on them, right? So I was like, okay,
mhm.
so I'm not going to be, so I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so then I actually ended up working at Adidas doing marketing.
Okay.
And that's where I think I kind of found my niche a little bit. I was like, okay, I liked working with the players. I like being creative with the players and also like challenging the players because these guys are, well, men and women are so talented and have so many
Mm,
other interests besides basketball. And I feel like for so long they were literally just seen as like one dimensional, right? It's like,
mm,
okay, you hoop and that's it. Season's over. We'll see you in 3.5 months, right?
right.
And so just getting to know some of these people better and better, and just like hearing the ideas they had, you know, creative ideas too that had
Mhm,
nothing to do with sports at all. It's like, okay, you know what? If I can ever have a lane where I can give them more of a voice, I
mhm,
think that's where I can kind of carve out my niche in the basketball world. So it's like there's a few ways to look at it. It's like 99.9% of us are failed athletes.
mhm.
And that's fine. You know what I mean? I mean, there's only 450 people in the league. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I tell people. It's like, that's a fraternity at a big school, right? I mean,
Yep.
it's not that many people. So it's not a failure if you don't make the league. I mean, cats to get a D1 scholarship have essentially won, right?
Yeah.
So the way I saw it was like, all right, so if we can create a platform and then I can work on the sport I love, but then also kind of share the platform with the people that actually played it, I think
Mm,
that's the win-win. So my partners and I, Chad and Charlie, Chad actually bought the domain in 2019.
mhm,
He gave me a call, and I was at summer league,
mhm,
and he's like, "Hey, when you're back in town, man, let's meet up." So we both live in uh, Arizona,
mhm,
and in the summertime it's like 114 degrees. So I was like, Chad, if we're meeting in person, this has to be important. He's like, oh yeah, of course. Okay. So then he tells me he bought basketballnews.com. And I was like, how'd you get it? Because the first thing I'm thinking is like, I just would have assumed. And so long story short, we pretty much met, we went to Suns games and like we just kind of brainstormed on making sure that we had a shared vision. And so
mhm.
Chad had already had a ton of success. He'd already sold a business for like 45, $50 million. So I just
Wow.
asked him, I was like, hey, Chad, I understand that you're completely loaded. And I'm not hurting either, but I'm not on your level.
Right.
But let's be clear: if this is a hobby, that's cool. I'll treat it as a hobby. But like, if you want to go all in on the business, let's go. He's like, nah, and I'm all in. And so from there, we essentially approached it as partners. And I
Mhm,
was never going to be the CEO. Actually, what
mhm,
happened was I started doing all the duties hiring the writers, finding people, using my contacts with players as well. And so then before you knew it, I was doing essentially the CEO duties. And
Right.
like he just literally hit me one day. He's like, Scott, you're running the company. Why don't we just make it official? And I was
Mm.
like, well, because that was never my plan. I was just
Right.
trying to get it to a certain point. But then I thought about it, I was like, man, am I a fool? What are you doing? Like, yes, of
Yeah.
course I'm gonna be the CEO. So I was always gonna be co-founder because again, like we started from day one in the summer of 2019. But it's like,
Mm.
okay, if I want to run it, I at least want to give myself a good 2 to 3 years so that we can establish a footprint in the industry. And then at that point, if I want to step back, then I'll do it then, right? So
Right.
so yeah, I mean, we've been full speed ahead. Like I mentioned earlier, we launched November 2020, and yeah, man, we've just been picking up steam.
Gotcha. Good stuff. So you just mentioned your partners, Chad and Charlie, right?
Yep.
Um, for me, I've again, I'm not sure if you knew, but so I run a small business,
Yeah,
basketball,
yeah.
the media outlet, scouting service, very, boot.
When I was
I
doing
would
my
say,
research, when I was
okay,
doing my research on YouTube, yeah,
gotcha, gotcha.
yeah.
So for me, like the bit, I guess about a year, the COVID year, I hired a bunch of interns, right?
Mm,
So like I had this whole thing, like I want to grow the company, I want to grow the business, and I remember I was a sports management major myself, and so I knew kids, everybody had to have internships. There's one thing I knew, is I remember I had to have one. The downside was COVID year; no one's allowing people to come into their buildings because of COVID,
good point.
and so I reached out to colleges around the country. So Georgetown, Georgia State, Arizona State, just different schools around the country. And surprisingly, I was, again, like when doing this by myself for so long, it's always every time something like good happens, it's almost like, wow, y'all I guess like people are messing with me. People are like actually gonna like
Yeah,
let me
yeah.
like they're letting me in, the room, so to speak. And
It's
so when I got
validation.
exactly, so when I got approved for like the internship programs at all these schools, I was like, shit. like and
Right.
then it was immediate. Like you start getting emails from kids, and so in a couple of months, I had 30 interns.
Mm,
And so the issue is so the internship that was great. The thing was then letting go, right? So
yeah.
because I had to, my saying has been, you always think you're a leader until you have to lead people. Like because I've always thought I was this great leader because I played basketball as a point guard. I was like, I'm a leader. It's
Yeah.
different when it's when you're running a
Yeah.
business, right? And so for me,
Yeah.
my ego had to subside.
Mm,
The ability to show humility had to come to the forefront, because if I wanted it to happen the way I thought it could, and I could see it, I had to let go. And so for me, I guess the question is, I guess with you guys being partners, is there ego has to be at the back. It seems like ego has to be in the back of everyone's mind, and everyone's just kind of doing whatever they need to do, because that's what you said. I'm doing CEO task, and I'm not the CEO because that's just kind of probably what you feel like you have to do to help grow this thing the way it has to grow.
right.
Is that kind of is that what you would say happened? And then is that a trait that you feel like you've kind of always had kind of throughout the process, or is it something that you kind of grew into in all the business endeavors that you've had prior?
Oh man, it's a great question. What I would say is that you brought up a great point, right? Because everyone thinks that they're tough until you have to find out you're tough, right? Like everyone
Mm,
thinks you're a leader. I think it's one of those things where I've evolved. I think as a leader, because my mom and dad empowered us, right? It's
right,
like they gave us room to fail. Nothing drastic, right? But I
right,
mean, I'm saying give us room to fail, and I think in turn, that's how I treat other people, right? So I just feel like I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room, because if I am, I'm in the wrong room, right? I mean,
hmm
maybe if it's a short conversation. So for us, I think the thing that has helped is the three of us are so different, but yet our goal's the same, right?
hmm
So it's like Chad and Charlie have a huge tech background, right? They're huge at SEO. Chad has
hmm
multiple business. Now he's selling masks. He actually made a fortune selling Halloween costumes, right? So
wow,
so that's his background, but he's a huge sports fan. My
hmm
background is more in sports and being creative, but I've also run sales teams as well.
hmm
And the whole thing with running a team, to your point, is you have to be egoless when it comes to success, but you have to believe in what you're actually doing, right? So
yeah,
it's like coaching people in sales, it was always just the funniest thing, right? The worst person to have on your team is someone that already had success in sales because they always thought they had it figured out. I would rather take a person that's never sold anything, and I guarantee that I get them to six figures in 90 days, right?
Mm,
Because the whole point was is if you're open to it and all you're going to do is find the salesperson inside yourself. I'm not going to make you into a salesperson. We're going to take what you do best and then just amplify it, right?
mhm,
So I think in building out the company, it's like some of it's probably just my natural personality, like being laid back but yet stern as well. But
mm,
also, I had the most experience in basketball, and I had the most relationships in the sport.
gotcha.
So, like I said, just from college guys I knew from college, high school AAU, being at Adidas, being in LA, I already knew so many people in the basketball space, the agents, music, and film. So for me, it's like, okay, if we're really gonna do this, I just went my phone and I just started hitting everybody. But the whole key, though, the whole reason why people were hitting me back was because I never asked them for anything. You know what I mean? Like when it was time to go out, even if Cat was in the league and we all knew who had the most money, I'm still buying around. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
Because it's one of those things where it's like people will respect you more than if you hit them up while you're still at the plate. My thing is, I'm gonna hit you up when I'm standing on second base,
mhm,
because then they're like, "Oh, okay." So when I'm hitting them, like, "Okay, Scott's never asked me for anything. Everything I've seen him do has been legit." So now, because how it is, these guys are getting hit up all the time. Now I
right,
wasn't hitting them up for a business loan. I was hitting
mhm,
them up for an opportunity just to see, hey, I realize, you've been retired now a little bit, now you're back home, with the family. What are you guys thinking about? And like those are all the conversations they had. So I'm just picking the brains of players. So for
mhm,
me, it's like, okay, if I can do this right off the bat, then we can establish credibility
mm,
within the basketball world as soon as possible, right? So we got my guy James Posey. We picked up Alex Kennedy from shoot. I mean, Alex is 30 and he's been
mm,
credentialed since he was 14 years old, right? So he's been
mhm,
covering the NBA for 16 years. He
right,
was at Hoop Site for like 7 years. So we picked up him, Etan, that was huge
mm,
for us. Rex Chapman is huge for us, Kenyon Martin, Jadakiss. So it's like we just kind of stacked on top of each other, but it all started with those first foundational pieces. And those were all
right,
people that I knew, right?
mhm,
So like that's what I was saying is it was never one of those things where I didn't think I couldn't run the company. It was like I had so many other things going on, but
right,
then I realized like, you know what? We got an opportunity. We have a window of time, but we're only going to be as strong as the foundation of the actual company itself, right? So I was like, you
gotcha.
know what? Let me just drop everything else, and I'm just going to be basketball news for at least 2.5, 3 years. And then, like I was saying, as we grow and as we expand, then maybe I can take a step back a little bit, right? But it's like right now, it's just grind time.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. So hearing what you just said, it kind of reminds me of something I say all the time. I always talk about having non-transactional relationships. Is like in this business, it's so valuable. Be like you said, because people are so used to getting asked for things, especially like in,
Oh,
in 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 what I'm doing and what I've been doing. I meet agents, I meet scouts, I meet executives, and like when I first started the business, I used to work in the league, so I wanted to get back. Since starting the business, I've kind of revamped that thought process, and it's kind of been more
mm,
so I like what I'm doing and where I am, and and just the growth of it all, and again, like you said, waking up doing what you love every day. And so, but what I've learned is like the relationships that I have with all these people who call me, hey James, what do you think about this guy, or hey, have you seen him? And the key has always been don't ask for anything, right? And
hmm
it's hard because like you have these, yeah, I have those days where it's like, man, this shit is hard, I don't want to do this anymore,
right, right.
and like, man, if I could just what if I just get a job as a scout again? Just like you start thinking about
Yeah,
those things, but like, but there's always that thing in the back of your brain, like, just shut up, just, because I've called people with the intent to act for something. And then, you know what, in the middle of the conversation, I let the conversation just go where it goes, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the cool thing is, it's kind of similar to what you just talked about. I know if I ever really needed them for something, if I called, they'd be there, right? Because
Right,
they're the same guys that I would say like my circle's tight, but it's the people that I know if I call them, they'll call me back. If I call
exactly.
them, if I text them, they'll text me back. And I don't have those relationships where like, oh, I'm a pest, or I'm bugging them in any way. I feel like we're actually genuinely friends,
Friends, exactly.
and so because of that, like you said, like if I'm on second base and I hit you, you might as well just, like just hit me, hey, just get an RBI real quick. It's gonna be,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you gotta get on base. Just knock me in, kind of thing.
That's the
Um,
move, man. That's
yeah.
the move. No, just I mean, because I think what happens is people just look at other people having so much, but
Mm,
it's like ultimately people will invest in something that they think is gonna win, right?
mhm.
And like invest doesn't always just mean money, it just means time, it means
Time.
advice, it
Mhm.
means, hey, just like those times that you're frustrated, like just someone just just hey James, just vent. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
because they see how much you're putting into it, they see how
Mm,
far you've come.
yeah.
They know the caliber of person you are. So then they're invested in you as an individual. And I think
Right.
that's where I think sometimes people want to skip steps, right? It's like,
Hmm.
oh, I have a business idea. I was like, man, do you have any research? Like, do you have any car washes are in a 5 mile radius? Like that's what I'm saying. Is like have some paperwork in mind.
Hmm.
Have it fully thought out. What differentiates you from someone else, right? I mean, if you haven't
Yep.
thought of it, like if nothing else, just watch Shark Tank for 3 episodes, right? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Seriously, like for as corny as that sounds, but like at least have a plan in place. So then
Hmm.
when you approach family members, whoever, it's like, okay, so when they start asking questions and if you don't have the answers, that's the worst thing you can have, right?
Yep.
So that's why I always say try things on a small scale and fail a little bit.
Hmm.
Figure it out. Like when I used to sell t-shirts, man, I was selling t-shirts online. And
Hmm.
first thing I learned was is to put everything out in 3 different colors, right? Like white, black, and red, white, black, and gray. And I realized, you know what, that's a huge mistake because I'm giving people options
Options.
and one person's like, I don't know about the red. I'm like, is it a real red? Is it cherry red? Is it wings red? Whatever, is it? And I was like, you know what? Just put every shirt out in white. It's cheaper on white. If people like it, they like it. And then 6 months later, put out in black because everyone has to match their shoes to whatever. So now you get the same person to buy the same shirt twice. And then you
Twice.
put out the third color and you're like, oh man, I can't believe you got it in red. I got to get it. So now that one person's turned into 3 customers, right?
Yep.
But again, I didn't read that. I didn't watch YouTube. I just did it. And
Hmm.
again, I did it small because it's t-shirts. I mean, literally, I'm talking about I printed 50 of them, right?
Hmm.
So like I'm never being stuck with this huge amount of shirts, but it's just the point of I had a process down. And then
Hmm.
as I started growing the brand, then it's like, okay, now I have proof of concept. So if I want to sit down and meet, like, hey, James, I got an idea. I've been doing shirts and hoodies for the last 3 years. These are my best sellers, blah, 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 blah. It's like, then it's a different conversation, right? Like
Yep.
now we can talk business. This is not
Exactly.
an idea. I have something tangible, right? And
Hmm.
so I just feel like so many people focus on the idea for so long. I'm like, I mean, it sounds cliche to say, but like honestly, just try it.
Yeah.
Don't be scared of failing. The key is don't don't start with 10 grand. You know what I mean? Start with like literally like $300, right?
Right.
Like something you can afford to spend, right? Because a cell phone bill is $100. If you go out to eat somewhere nice, that's 200. Okay, so stay in one weekend and take that $300 and see if your idea works, right?
Yep.
And it's one of those things where it's like, since I've always had that mindset, again, when I'm hitting up players who like people have to think about it from their perspective. Like they're the breadwinners of their family, right? So like
Hmm.
they have aunts, uncles, cousins always hitting them up for stuff. So I don't want to be just another person that's nagging them, right? I'm like, hey, I got a legit business idea. I hit Posey up, he hit me right back immediately because he knew like I've never asked him for anything, right? I'm like,
Right.
hey, Pose, I got an idea. What do you think about this? And then so he got involved off rip. And again, that gives us credibility because Pose wasn't a superstar in the league, but he was a damn good player,
Yep.
three-time champ, and he has the respect of his peers, from Shaq to Udonis, Wade, Ray Allen, whoever, right? So it's like that's what we did was like, let's get our foundational pieces, but
Hmm.
again, it's because we never burned any of those bridges. So when it was time to holler at them, boom, we just made it
Just a
happen.
call. Yep. Like that. So, you just talked about how you Chad and Charlie kind of all have, like, you guys are all on this on one accord, so to speak, and
Yeah.
that kind of goes to like rowing in the same direction. Like I read so many books, and your coaches say different things about, like being on the same page, and
Mhm.
even in sales, like I always tell people, sales are so important. I've been in sales to cars, basketball
Yeah.
uniforms.
Yeah.
While I hated sales, I learned so much from it, right?
Without a doubt.
So, and so so for me, like I learned, well, a couple of things. One, you have to come out your shell. I sell like I talk to girls. Like that's one of those things. I
Oh,
always, you
what?
know,
I use that analogy all the time.
Yep.
No,
So
no.
I talk to girls. Yep. So like it's in you. And then in sport, in order for a coach sells, a GM sells, right? Because they're selling their vision, they're selling their system, they're selling their way the way they do things, right? So if you can believe, if you get somebody to believe in that, that's how you build the culture, right? So that's what I'm kind of getting to, like the culture of it all. Like for you
Hmm.
guys to be on one accord and on the same page while having vastly different backgrounds, how does that trickle down to the guys that are working under you guys now? Because like you said, like you want to build a foundation, but it starts from the top, right? So how do you guys communicate what you're looking for? How do you even identify guys that you think, because some of that matters too. Like you can't just, it can't be anybody, right? So you have to pick the
Right.
right guys that can, in theory, like be a part of a culture, right? So
Yeah.
how do you guys go about building that culture to grow this thing the way it's growing so far?
Um, I think some of it's personality traits, but honestly, just be as brutally honest as possible.
Gotcha.
No one likes to take medicine, but we all have to take it, right? It just is what it is. And I feel like if you're honest with people, they have to respect you, right? I mean,
Mhm.
like, um, they just have to, because again, like when you look back on the situation, like I mentioned, being in sales, hey, look, everyone looks at the numbers, right? I mean, you're not as in sales. It's like it's only a sale when you get the last three numbers on the back of the card, right? You can have great conversation, build rapport, like all these keywords. None of it matters unless the person bought, right? So for me, it's no different in this. So when we looked at building out the team, it's like we approached it like we were an actual sports team. So we had a salary cap.
Mhm.
So we could have gone all in and see if we couldn't do a deal with like a Dwayne Wade, right? But we would have spent all of our money on one person.
Mhm.
So for us, it's like, okay, if we can't get superstars, let's get people that are superstar adjacent. And like that's
Mhm.
what I was going back to. Posey's a prime example. 3 and D guy, like I said, played in the league 12 years. I've known him for years, like just a great dude. But all the people he played with and against have nothing but respect for him because that's how he carries himself, right? So
Mhm.
when he reaches out to people, that helps our credibility. Etan Thomas is a prime example, right? Etan was a role player. One of his episodes, he had Mark Cuban in his car for 90 minutes. And I'm like, Etan, how the hell did you get Mark Cuban for 90 minutes? Well, I didn't know. Etan was Cuban's first draft pick, right? So,
Wow.
like, that's what I'm saying is like, so aligning ourselves with respectable people just garnered us more respect as well, right? Because
Gotcha.
again, these are the players that other players hung with, respected. Etan was never a great player. Well, hold up, anyone in the league is a great player. He's the
I
first
know
one
what you mean.
draft choice. He's
I
all
follow you.
American at
Yeah.
Syracuse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So look,
Yeah.
let me be abundantly kind of that. But what I'm saying is though, but the way he carries himself, like Etan demands people's respect, right?
He's
And
like a
so it's
professor.
like,
He's like a
yeah,
professor.
no. So, but I'm saying though, that's how he gets these interviews. I'm like,
Mhm.
Etan, how'd you get so and so? It's like because he just reached out. Because, but the thing is, it's because how Etan carries himself, right?
Mhm.
Like he doesn't disrespect people. He doesn't yell and shout. He's very intelligent, well researched, well scripted, but also he's about his biz, right?
Mhm.
So again, it's like when we're thinking of the players we wanted, that was always a huge focus. It's like let's get players that are respected because
Mhm.
that's going to help them get guests. That's going to help them go on other people's pods and everything else.
Mhm.
And then as far as building up the staff, we were very particular in how we did it. Getting Alex Kennedy, man, I mentioned earlier, was huge for us, right?
Mhm.
Because like I said, Alex has been covering the NBA for essentially half his life.
Right.
And so he knew so many other writers. So he brought on Spencer Davies, Nikias, who's blown up for us, right? I
Mhm.
never heard of him. Alex sent me 3 articles. I made it halfway through the first article. I was like, hey, we have to get this kid. Like he's super talented, right? So
Mhm.
like for me, kind of like I mentioned a little bit earlier, right? Going back on the film side, I
Mhm.
focus on how good the story is, right? So I'm not concerned with how many Twitter followers someone has. I don't really even care about that. I just care, man, if you're dope. Like if
Right.
we were a record label, I wouldn't want to see the artist. I would just want to hear them sing or rap and be like, okay, she's dope. I don't care how she looks, right?
Mhm.
Because to me, if you put the marketing in front of the product, I feel like you have a ceiling as far as the actual product itself. If you keep the product first, and again, I'm not trying to compare people to an actual product, but you know what I
I know
mean.
what you mean. I know what
So,
you mean. Yeah.
so for us, it's like, okay, how do we just work with as many talented people as we can find? And I feel like we've done a good job of not hiring the same person twice, right?
Right.
Because I feel like as a startup, if you do that, you kind of just hammer the same nail. So we have some writers that is more like transactional stuff, right? As far as like trades and rumors and stuff like that. Nikias gets more into like breakdowns and film breakdowns. We have a couple people doing that. Matt Babcock for us has been huge because he's a respected scout. He used to be an agent. His his uncle drafted Bill Walton, so his family's been in the NBA for like 45 years, right? So associating with people like that, and again, I mean, I realize I'm saying the same word over and over, but it's like the respect they carry flows over to us, right? So it's like people are looking at basketball news differently. Oh, wow, these guys got a ton. They got Posey, Rex Chapman, they got Matt Babcock. So Babcock, he opens doors for us with, I mean, literally with the teams, right? And then someone like Alex, who again has been around the league for all these years. So I just feel like that was one of the things that we really focused on early was, hey, I didn't necessarily care, getting the biggest names. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say if like Woj was somehow available. Yeah, of course. I mean, we would make an offer and he'd probably say no, but it is what it is. But what I'm saying though is for us, is always, I feel like what lasts is credibility, So like we were never worried about getting, the first on the story and getting it wrong. We don't want to do any of that crap, man. Like there's so many great stories to tell. And I feel like a lot of them aren't being told because people are just focusing on, again, they're putting the marketing in front of the actual product.
Right.
So
right. That makes a lot of sense. I feel like what you're saying is it's the substance more so, So like you're because we know there are people and there's sites that are clickbait driven. It's just I want it whatever they're thinking, whatever they're into, we want to play on that, as opposed to this is a real genuine piece of material. This is something that is true to whatever is speaking to it. There's a difference, right? And
without a doubt.
But the thing is, like, those people can't get away from being clickbait because that's what they're known for, right? And it's thing like you said, like the credibility of it all is once you go there, you can't revert. It's like it's like crying wolf, right? It really is like once they know you lying about the wolf, when the wolf come get your ass, ain't nobody coming to save you because you already, so like it's the same kind of concept. And
I mean it's crazy because like Skip Bayless used to actually be like a respected writer. Like people, I mean, now obviously dude's making a ton of money and he has a shtick or whatever, but like people wouldn't even know it. Like I remember reading his stuff on the Dallas Cowboys back in the day. It's like he was a respect, like Stephen A. Smith, when I first heard of him, he was in Philly still. And like he became an insider because he was so cool with all the players. So again, this isn't necessarily to take shots at them, but it's like at some point, it's like you're just sacrificing any credibility of being an actual reporter or a writer and just getting on TV and yelling, right? So now that's easy for me to say, right? Because no one's offering me $12 million to get on there and just scream. But having said that, it's like, we don't even want to go down that road, right? Like I love the intelligent, fun, charismatic debates about sports. And I feel like there's ways to do that and have fun and still be critical and just not end up just, being like a caricature of yourself, basically, right? So yeah, we're just never headed down that road.
Yeah. So we talked about the culture. We talked about, I guess, partnering up, the ability to leave ego at the door. What would you say outside of those things? What do you think the thing that is most valuable to the success of the company outside of the stuff we've already talked about? So the culture, the character, the I guess the humility, all that stuff. Like what would you say the one thing is that says if we do this, we're going to be okay?
Really good question. I'd probably say there's a couple of them. First and foremost, never think we figured it out, right? Like stay extremely humble. And I know that that's easy to say, right? Because I feel like people that have success a lot of times feel like it's about themselves, right? So I'm not writing any articles. I'm not recording any podcasts. So me thinking the growth of our company is based upon some idea that I had is foolish, right? So first and foremost, I would definitely say that. And I just say like having core values and sticking to them, because I feel like the biggest mistake I think a lot of people make is going to the gym and weighing themselves every day. you're just going to drive yourself nuts, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to lose weight now. I'm eating nothing but chicken and veggies for like the next 2 months, right?
Mm.
But guess what? I'm not going to weigh myself every day. I'm just going to go to the gym, eat right, and then okay, after 60 days, let's see where I'm at, right? So it's like we have core things that we believe in as a company, and I
Mm.
see no reason to stray from them just because you have a small success over here, right? So it's
Right.
like, and then last but definitely not least is diverse voices, whether that's men, women, race, age, really doesn't matter. I just feel like again, having the same content as everyone else, dude, I don't care who's dating who. I don't
Right.
care about that stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just don't. So we know full and well. I mean, there's things we hear a little bit early, but it's not confirmed. And if we ran it, we could probably get 150,000 people on the site that day and whatever. But it's like, is that worth it? You know what I mean? Because again, it's about being around a long time. So
Mm-hmm.
the way I see it is like we're like the independent artist who wants to
Mm-hmm.
build this long career versus having that one huge hit. So
Yep.
yeah, those are the main
Gotcha.
things, probably.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. I always, it's crazy. Like you talked about like being the independent artist. I always kind of equate the same thing in the business. It's like you selling CDs out the trunk. Like
Yeah,
I always remember hearing
that's the
stories
P.
about exactly. And for me, like I remember MC Hammer, right? So I remember
Yeah,
like the story of MC Hammer when he first had. When he had the label meeting that they wanted him. And Hammer was like, man, I'm making $100,000, every 3 months selling CDs, selling tapes at the time out my
yeah,
trunk.
tape.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm selling out everywhere I go. Like, what do I need you for? Right. And so, but he had built an organically based following
mm-hmm.
that no matter what, you can sustain. So then when he blows up, great. Everyone knows who I am and they see how talented I am. But I also have this group of people who've always known that I was good. They've always known that like and they've seen me doing it. And so the credibility that I have is that now they're not only are they supporting me, but they're proud of me too, right? There's a huge difference. And so I think people knowing the difference between how to build that way and like you said, wanting to jump the line. And I think if you build organically, when you pop, it may seem overnightish, but
right.
there's a grind that you weren't privy to, right? So some people were, but the masses don't see the grind that made me an overnight sensation after 10 years, right? That's kind of what it is, So
I like that.
So that's kind
Plus,
of
you know what it is too though is that's what's sustainable, right?
right.
And that's the whole thing. It's like no one wants to be number one for a day. What does that mean?
Right.
I made number one, man. It's like
right.
I want to be up there. Like we want to be Nick Saban. You know what I mean? Like year after this was a down year. This was a disappointing year for Alabama. They went 12-2 and lost the national championship game, right? So that's how we want to be. So how do you sustain that, right? And I feel like it's analyzing yourself, but it goes back to what I was saying is no one's figured it all out, right? It's like you may have figured it out for a moment, but I'm like, okay, again, how do you stay here? And the whole way of staying here is always reevaluate yourself, being honest with yourself, right? And I feel like having a two-way conversation, because I always tell people, I don't want to employ you, I want to empower you, right? So eventually the people we hire will only be here for 2 or 3 years, and they'll either go off and start their own thing, or maybe they'll take my job one day. Like ultimately, I don't care. But the point is, a true leader creates other leaders. And if we haven't done that, then we haven't done what we were supposed to do, right? So again, we're like looking to hire people that are hungry and eager and ambitious. I'd rather try to slow someone down than have to speed them up. Because I have to speed you up, or that's a long-term issue, right? Like if I got to chase you down and walk you through things to write about, we're probably not the best fit for you, right? The way I'm wired, I just have that conversation the first day. Like, why wait? Because then it's awkward, right? Oh, you've been here 6 months. No. We're gonna get all the awkward stuff out of the way the first day.
Right.
And so, and it's funny because you can see people just be like, oh man, like, okay, like yeah, like you always know where you stand, right? So we have to let someone go. It's like you don't take pride in that. Like no one enjoys firing. Well, I shouldn't say no one, but you shouldn't enjoy firing people. But it's like if you let someone know where they stand the entire time, it shouldn't be a shock.
Yeah.
Because I tell people like, I haven't fired anyone. They fired themselves.
Yep. I always try to tell people I try to lead the crew that I have now the way I always wanted to be led, right? And so
Mm,
I'm always the guy that I'm not overbearing because I hated being overbearing, right? So
yes.
the first time I realized that I hate overbearing people, I was working in the kitchen. I was working in the kitchen. In my earlier life, I wanted to be. It was two things I wanted to do. I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to be a chef, right? And
Oh,
so
damn. Okay.
I actually did culinary school first before I went to college to play basketball. And I was working, and the reason why I stopped cooking for in restaurants, anyways, was because the chef, like the head chef, would always be literally over my shoulder, and like literally over my shoulder. I'm like, what the, what are you
Yeah.
doing? And so like I remember being so uncomfortable because now you're worried about messing up, you're worried about making a mistake, and the thing is they're pointing it out. And so I always tell the guys when I bring them on, I say, look, this is how it's gonna work. If you say you got something, I'm leaving you alone. I'm gonna give you a date that is due. And if you don't call me or text me and tell me that you have an issue, I'm expecting it done by this date.
There it is.
When that date comes, if it is not done, me and you're going to have a conversation. And that's kind of how everybody I've ever brought on is I've had that exact same conversation but what I've also learned is like everybody works different. While they'll all say, oh, that's great. Some people actually need an extra little tap on the butt, to keep going. So, but that's the leadership aspect. Like you have to figure out who your people are too. So like outside of that conversation, you can't just say, oh, I talked to them and we're good. You have to have, I guess you have to have continuous conversations with people to figure them out because you got to get to know people. And I always, you always think about coaches like, oh, I treat everybody the same. No, that's impossible. No. I don't because everyone isn't the same. So everyone doesn't deserve to be treated the same. And then two, you can't treat everyone the same because everyone's not going to respond the same way. And so I hearing that, it just kind of makes me feel good because I know that it's not just one way. And like, being upfront, being open, it, like you said, like, so if something goes south, we've already had a conversation about what my expectations are, what your expectations are, what you should expect from yourself. And so when it doesn't work out, don't blame me. It's just, you got to look at yourself in the mirror in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, a lot of that just goes back to, past experience from managing and running teams. I realized, when something goes wrong, you can either look at everyone else or you can look at yourself. I'm like, okay, you know what? I didn't set the proper expectations and I didn't do it from day one. And then also just growing up in a blunt household, like my mom and dad, you know what I mean? So it's just like, it is what it is at a certain point too, you know what I mean? Like my mom didn't care. So it's just one of those things where I feel like too many times people are worried about, making the right impression or hurting someone's feelings. It's how you deliver it. Like, I'm not screaming on people. Come on, man. You know what I mean? It's like, but you're just having a conversation, but like, you're just being honest with them. Like, hey, look, I understand that you may have done it, this way over there. For us, this is what we found works best. Does that work well with you? And of course, everyone's, to your point, James, everyone's going to say yes. Okay. But it's like college. Because remember high school, like, they would always, they would check in every other day with you, like if you're reading a book, you would read it as a class. But in college, they just gave you books and said, okay, we'll see you in 6 weeks. And whoever read it. Well, guess what? That's what sales is, right? So it's like, for me, like you mentioned, selling cars. I mean, man, I used to own part of a dealership. And look, we would bring on people and everyone's like, oh yeah, I can sell cars? Okay, we're going to see. This is hey, you only eat what you kill in the car business. So if you don't kill, you will starve. So you're gonna find that out really quick. So when you wonder why Rick is out on the lot all day in the summertime in Arizona and he's making 5 times what you are, it's because he's outside hustling, right? So it's like for us, it's the same thing. Like I said, though, the thing we owe people though is to show them the ultimate respect is to be honest with them, right? And like I mentioned, for us, the only thing worse than being micromanaged is micromanaging people. Like I don't want to do that. Just like you said, like you're leading the way that you want to be led. I don't want to be bothering people and texting them and slacking them all the time. Like, first of all, I don't have time to do that. But also, it's like, who the hell wants to spend their day doing it? So for me, it's like, hey, look, we're going to give you rope. Again, we don't mind you failing, but if this is the same mistake over and over again, the conversations and the tenor change, right? And then eventually it just reaches a point where it's like, it is what it is.
Indeed. All right, so we're going. I've stolen enough of your time. So So we're gonna end with this question right here. So you're Detroit guy.
Yes, sir.
Give me. I like it. So, favorite hip hop artist of all time from Detroit.
Oh, from Detroit?
Yeah, from Detroit.
Late great, rest in peace, Jay Dilla.
Okay.
There is no Kanye if there is no Dilla.
Gotcha.
I stand on that.
Gotcha. I like that. Like that. And the most underrated hip hop artist from
Elzai, not even close. Royce is underrated, but I think his relationship with Marshall, and no, I'm not calling him Marshall like I know him, but it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
But ironically, I did actually grow up with Paul Rosenberg, but yeah. But I'd say Royce would be, but I just feel like, you know, his notoriety, thanks to Marshall, is big enough. Elzai and Guilty Simpson have to be the two most underrated cats from the D. Man, Elzai is, I think, I'm not sure that he cares necessarily about blowing up, but if he was born like 15 years earlier, he would be up there with all the greats. Like, he's one of the greatest rappers to ever rap. It's just that he raps in this time now where, you know, I feel like a lot of the lyrics are dumbed down, beats and all that, you know, have taken more of, I guess, a forefront, I guess. But yeah, Man, Ozai is absolutely incredible. He's so dope. He remade Nas Illmatic, and we all thought this was a horrible mistake because you don't touch a classic, let alone a rap. And he actually pulled it off. So he was in Slum Village for years. He's one of those guys that, like, other rappers know his name, but he just never had that huge hit, I guess you could say.
Gotcha. Okay, makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
well, I'm definitely gonna do my deep dive then for sure.
Yeah. Oh, hey, look, hey, hit me up after you. Hey, listen to in fact, you know what? I'm gonna send you some Elzai to listen to, specifically. Please. Not entire albums, but just like 3 to 4 songs. I guarantee you, but oh my God, like, dude is incredible. Seriously. He's just one of those guys that he's never been signed to a major label. He only puts out albums like once every 3 years, you know. So
cool. Please do. Please, I appreciate that for sure. Definitely.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Scott, I appreciate your time. I really do. Like, this has been great. For me, like, this is like hearing how you did this, and, like, you know, just what you guys are doing. For me, it's a lot. So I appreciate it. And sometimes you just want to find different voices. Sometimes, like you said, like, you're looking for different voices. Having a unique voice on this episode is just going to be huge. So I definitely appreciate it. Congratulations on all the success you guys are having. I'm watching and I'm learning. So for sure. So I appreciate you.
Shit. Appreciate the invite. Seriously, man. It's you know, man, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, you're just running up a hill and then you'll randomly look back and like, oh damn, we're a little further up the hill than I thought, right? So, like, there's like random things that happen. Like, when I was back home for the holidays, I ran into a dude I've known for years, and he was showing me the Basketball News app and had no idea that I had anything to do with this. So it's like, it's moments like that where I'm like, oh wow, you know, maybe we're making a little more noise than I realized, you know?
That's a dope feeling right there. I think that's probably the one right there. Like, yeah, just somebody showing you your stuff and not. It was crazy. Stuff. Yeah.
Because, you know, like, we have had this conversation. He's like, oh yeah, and then, like, he was showing me the app, and I was just like, and I was thinking he was joking, right? The whole time I'm like, and I was like, oh wait, and his name is Chris. I was like, Chris, you know that's my company, right? He's like, what? I was like, Basketball News. He's like, man, shut. I was like, yes. It's like, shut. I go, yes. Like. And, like, at first he didn't believe me. I was like, Chris. So I started pulling out my phone and, like, showing him the Slack we have. I was like, dude, This is my company. Like, here's my LinkedIn. Oh man, that's dope. So it was just kind of nuts. Like, you know, like I was saying, at first I thought it was a joke, you know, but no, he was serious.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. I like that. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Attacking the Paint. Stay tuned for more episodes to come soon. We've got another great episode dropping next month, but please stay tuned for more episodes, and please like, share, subscribe, all the other good stuff when it comes to the pod. Thank you so much. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.